helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, certified Christian counselor and director of Ottawa's Elim Counselling Services.
Hi, I'm Michael Hart, director of Elim Counselling Service, a Christian counseling ministry in Ottawa. And if you're not familiar with us, you can find out more about us at our website at www.elimcounsellingministry.com. And you're listening to the Life Transformation radio broadcast. Michael Hart, as I have said before, and with me in studio today is Melissa Waggett. And as usual, we have another interesting show lined up for you today. Today's show is about marital conflicts, and there are those of you out there who are saying, yes, this is what I've been waiting to hear about, how to deal with the conflicts that we are having in our marriage. So stay tuned to listen to the entire show, because there are very helpful things that we'll be talking about here today. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks for having me back, Michael.
It's my pleasure.
So as you were talking there, today's show is going to be all about marital conflicts. And I feel like many couples are probably very surprised and hopeless when they have that first big fight of their marriage. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they may feel unloved or become concerned even about the success of their marriage, or are they going to even make it? Mm-hmm. However, in one of your workshops, you've explained that conflict often, especially in marriage, is normal and, if anything, actually healthy for a marriage. Can you explain that a little bit more, how conflict can be a healthy thing for us to go through in our marriages?
Yes, let me say, whenever I see couples who come in and they're, very reluctant to talk about their fights, and they will say something like, we're here, our marriage is just so good, everything is fine, but we're just here because we need a minor tune-up, and we never fight, we never have disagreements or arguments. I think that to me is a big red flag, and usually by the third or fourth session with such couples, you realize that there are major issues at the root of the silent. Oftentimes, the lack of conflict is like the quiet, the calm before the storm, as you would say. But I think that conflicts are very natural. But because when you think about it, Melissa, you have two individuals who are from very different home backgrounds in most cases. They're from sometimes different cultures, different, even from the same country, different parts of the country with different, they are male and female with different ways of looking at things, different types of emotions for different situations. And so when you put that kind of a cocktail together, then you're going to have conflicts. I think conflicts are just a normal way of trying to make adjustments to a relationship and to find out how do we relate to each other in such a way that make us both happy. So when those conflicts starts happening, it is very, very normal, and it's a way of saying we care about this relationship enough to be able to have a dialogue and a discussion, and even to have heated arguments about things that are not going right. To be silent and to have a lack of conflict, especially in the early years of coming together, is very unnatural, and I think it speaks to danger down the road.
So for those of you out there who are listening, maybe going through some of this, take heart. You're in good company. Mm-hmm. It's an okay thing to be going through. So
yes,
don't be worried your marriage is going to end just because you've had your first big fight.
Yes.
Have hope.
I think one of my favorite things is to interview, as I have sessions with people who are doing premarital counseling.
Mm-hmm.
They're in this bubble and they're in this bliss, like, we never argue. So sometimes I will put some scenarios before them. So let's just say that
you trap them, Michael.
yeah, because they don't realize what marriage is going to be like. They think it's going to be, a bed of roses where every day is just blissed, and they're going to be staring in each other's eyes with this kind of a gaze for the rest of their life. So I will say things like, just imagine, that, you're having a family dinner and your mother-in-law comes over and she starts, just redecorating the house for you and telling you how to cook your meals and, criticizing your cooking, and, how would you deal with it? Oh, it's no big deal, and I would just smile at her, and I wouldn't make it a problem. And sometimes it takes maybe 3 or 4 examples before you can help them to see the reality of some of the issues that are going to come up in marriage. So I think those kind of things, like dealing with in-laws, dealing with finances, dealing with each other's different likes and dislikes, different sexual desires. These are all things that are going to cause conflict later on. And it's good that couples realize that this is a natural part of working out what's the normal for that relationship, how to relate to each other, and how to live in such a way to have a happy life. And conflict is the pathway to get to happiness.
Mm-hmm. Another thing you talk about in your Kingdom Life workshop is that couples in conflict eventually take on certain patterns, which, if you can identify what those patterns are, can be helpful when you're trying to help couples that are having problems. What are these patterns that couples kind of get trapped in when conflict is in their marriage?
This is a very important part of the process of counseling that we do, because I think it gives hope to couples right away. When they come in and they're going through a lot of conflict, you're able to say, this is the pattern that you're in. It gives them hope, because they start realizing, wow, we're not strange. Our situation is not an anomaly. Other couples go through the same thing. So there are only 3 or 4 patterns that couples go through. And the first and most common pattern of conflict is what we call pursue, withdraw. Pursue, withdraw. And this is where one of the spouses is the pursuer in dealing with conflict, and the other is the withdrawer. So the pursuer is the one who, if there's an issue, will want to talk about the conflict. The withdrawer, in most cases, are the husband.
I was just thinking, it's when you get home and you're like, I have to talk to you.
And in that case, doesn't want to deal with a conflict. It's not right to stereotype men like that. There are some men too who are pursuers, and some women who are withdrawers. But the most common pattern is where you have the male being the withdrawer and the female being the pursuer. So you have issues that arise and needs to be dealt with. The pursuer goes after the issue and tries to make things right. The withdrawer shuts down, goes away, leaves the room, turns on the TV, or goes for a drive. And so you have this recurring pattern. Now the interesting thing about the pursue withdraw pattern is that the more this pattern continues, the more intense is the desire of the pursuer to pursue and to go after the issues.
So is this something sometimes you hear people complaining about someone who nags them? Would that be the type of thing where you're just like a dog with a bone, you're going and going because you're not getting that response you want, right? The person's shutting down, you want to talk about it, they're not talking about it, so you're going to talk to them because you want to talk to them about it.
Absolutely.
And it just keeps going and going.
And sometimes it's that attitude of a dog with going after a bone kind of attitude that sometimes leads to the withdrawer feeling cornered and feeling trapped and having this fight or flight response. In most cases they're fleeing from the situation. That it's kind of that attitude. So if you want to get some good ideas as to how to approach issues in a way that's productive, we won't go into it in detail in this show in terms of communication techniques, but in the shows that we did on communication part 1 and 2, if you look at the recording of the podcast, we went into detail as to how to talk about issues, pitfalls to avoid, and so forth. But sometimes the pattern of the pursue withdraw from the very beginning is set up for disaster because of the way in which issues are being pursued. Now, the second pattern is where you have attack, where you have 2 partners, they're equally zealous.
I'm seeing the flames and the smoke out of the ears, a lot of heated discussions, let's call them.
Yes, for want of a more violent term. So you have this situation where you have both partners going at it and no one willing to sometimes even listen to what the other one is saying, because they're both very emotional and very very enthusiastic about getting the issues fixed. And you can see that if you have two partners who are attackers, who are both attacking the issues, and no one is willing to be the listener in that situation, you can have the remedy for big fight, lots of sparks, and unfortunately sometimes even a physical abuse. So the Bible tells us that a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. So in the pattern of attack, when you have zealous individuals who are both very, very heated in going after each other, you can have a lot of arguments getting out of control. But this is not to say that going after the issue is a bad thing. It's just to say that a lot of times there are problems that ensue because of how they approach. And we're going to talk later on in the show about some of the predictors of a relationship in trouble. So the attack patterns make for a lot of drama. But then we see the third pattern, Melissa, where they call withdraw. And this is where you have two withdrawers. Like there's nobody really talking about the issues. The issues are there. The elephant in the room, so to speak, but the issues are not being discussed. And people will look on that couple and they will say, wow, they're such a happy couple.
They never fight.
They're always holding hands and they seem so in harmony. I wish our relationship was like that. Just look at them. But a lot of times the relationship is not what it seems like on the surface. Underneath those that kind of tranquility is a lot of times a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of pain, a lot of frustration that is not being dealt with. A common situation that I see is couples who they have gone through this withdraw pattern for years. And suddenly one day, one of the spouse, usually the man comes home and he finds the house empty, or he realizes that his wife has moved out or just moved out some of her things and have gone away. And then from a distance, she starts communicating that I can't deal with this anymore. And usually the husband is shocked. Like, I had no idea. I thought we had a great marriage. I thought on the scale of 1 to 10, our marriage was a 9. So this comes like out of the blue. But when you begin to explore what was happening in those relationships, you see that usually the wife was a kind of a silent sufferer that was sacrificing everything and all her likes, her dislikes, her likes, her hobbies, because maybe the husband disliked it. So a case in point, and I'm going to change just from the details here, is like a wife who hated golf, but she was golfing every weekend. Mm-hmm. Because the husband liked golf.
And she didn't want to say anything.
And she didn't want to say anything, but she was doing it because she felt if she were to say, I don't want to go golfing, it would cause a conflict. Mm-hmm. So for years, she took on this role of being the golfing partner of her husband, but all the time resenting it and feeling as if she didn't have a voice. So you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio broadcast, and I'm your host, Michael Hart, and with me in studio today is Melissa Waggett, and we're talking about marital conflicts, and we have so far looked at the fact that conflict is a good thing in relationships, because if they're handled properly, they can bring about lasting change. And then we're talking about, Melissa, you've asked me about the different patterns, and I've identified the different patterns so far: pursue, withdraw, attack, and I was just explaining about the withdraw patterns. Let me say about the third pattern that sometimes the withdraw pattern becomes a result of the pursue, withdraw, or the attack pattern. It's a kind of aftermath of those two patterns, where you have one spouse that has been pursuing for years and then gets burnt out because the issues are not being dealt with, and they get to a stage where they say, well, it's no use.
I've done all that I could.
have done everything that I can. So there is this quiet now because the person who has withdrawn, or you have two attackers who are going at it, and they both get burnt out because nothing is being achieved. So they go into withdraw. The interesting thing about the withdraw pattern is that it has been shown to be the most predictive pattern of a divorce, not the attack or the pursue withdraw, because when it gets to the withdraw patterns, it's where you have people saying, I don't care about this relationship to fight about it anymore. I don't care to try to make change. I have tried and I have given up. And then it's just a matter of time before this relationship falls apart. Or you have couples who are silent and they never fight, but the frustration is mounting until one day it overflows and reaches a peak that cannot be tolerated. And one person who cannot tolerate conflict leaves in the middle of the night or while the other person is at work.
So as we've been talking through this, as we said at the top of the show, conflict is normal. It's healthy when handled properly. But you have talked about some of the attitudes that can be shown when conflict is happening that are good predictors that a marriage is in trouble. And you've alluded to, I think, some of them in our different patterns of behavior discussion we were just having there. But are there other predictors that can be seen when conflict is arising in people's attitudes that can be predictors that our marriage is maybe not heading in the direction we want it to be?
Absolutely. As I said in the beginning, conflict, it's a good thing. It's how they're handled that will determine whether or not a marriage succeeds or fail. And I just realized that I didn't give out my contact information in the last break. So let me just say again, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio broadcast. I'm your host, Michael Hart. With me in studio is Melissa Wagat. Our contact information, you can reach us at 613-699-1677, or you can learn more about us at our website at ELIM, counselingministry.com, counseling with 2 L's. Yeah, so we're talking about attitudes. You had asked me about attitudes that are predictors of a marriage in trouble. And I started by saying that whereas conflict is normal, how they are dealt with and what goes on during those conflicts is what will decide whether or not a marriage fail. John Gottman, one of the premier researchers in couples relationships, have done extensive research that shows that couples who fall apart have more or less the same kind of issues as happily married couples. So it's not the lack of issues or the lack of problems that result in one couple being happily married and the other couple ending in divorce because there's conflict in that relationship. They have more or less the same issues, but there are some things that Gottman identified in troubled relationship. And in his book, he calls them the 4 horsemen. And I've kind of given them different names here based on some of the other research that I have done. But one of the first one is what I would call fault finding, where there is the tendency to focus on not just the issues, but focus on the person rather than the problem.
So I was going to say, is this one of those situations, sometimes I think we've heard in maybe premarital counseling, the you statements or the you always or you never,
Absolutely.
And how you should kind of avoid that. Like it's
Absolutely.
You never take out the garbage, or
Yes.
you never listen to me,
Yes.
or you always complain about my mom. Is that what you're kind of describing
Yes, that's
there?
what I'm explaining here. So there's a lot of you statements, and in our radio shows that we did on communication, we talk about how important it is to talk about I feel this way. When this happens, I feel like this, instead of saying you do this or you do that. So in troubled marriages, there's a lot of there's a lot of blaming and accusing. So the approach to the problem, to issues that arise, is sometimes what causes the one person to withdraw, because no one likes to be told every time that you are the cause of a problem. Just imagine what it would be like if every day you go into work, your boss is pointing a finger at you and saying, you did this again, you did that again, why didn't you do this? And if that keeps on every day, how many of us would feel enthusiastic to go to work and say,
we'd probably all quit.
Yeah, we'd probably quit and find another job. But it's so shocking that many individuals in a relationship think that they can do that to their spouse and still achieve a good, happy relationship and work through issues. So I'm not saying that issues are to be swept under the carpet. I'm simply saying here that the way you approach issues, if it results in one partner feeling blamed or accused all the time, you're not going to get anywhere in those discussions. So that's a fault finding way of approaching issues. And then there is the second, which I call defensiveness, where a person continuously denies or disagrees with, and attempts at sometimes reading the minds of the other person. They can tell what the motive of the other person is. So instead of saying, okay, we have this issue on the table, we have to deal with the bills today, they will start mind reading and will start saying, I know this is not about the finances, is it? This is just about you wanting to pick a fight with me. You are just so you can't let things remain peaceful. So they will start becoming defensive whenever issues are brought to the table. So with this kind of defensiveness, it's very hard to deal with anything. And their defensiveness that sometimes results in people literally putting off discussing real issues indefinitely. So it's a kind of defensiveness where they're not necessarily saying, I don't want to talk about it. They'll say, oh, yes, we'll talk about it, but not now. Now is not the right time. But there is never a right time, because every time that the spouse who is pursuing tries to talk about the issue, this defensiveness comes in the way. And so what happened is that eventually issues build up. The frustration and the hurt and the emotional turmoil from these situations build up and becomes worse over time.
You can see how frustrating that can be for that person.
Absolutely.
And how, as you say, it can end up leading to that person withdrawing entirely and or exploding just out of frustration.
Yes. So you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio broadcast. I'm your host, Michael Hart, and with me in studio today is Melissa Waggett, and we're discussing marital conflicts. If you'd like to find out more about this topic or any questions, we can reach us at 613-699-1677, or you can contact us by our contact information on our website at elimcounselingministry.com, and Elim is spelled E-L-I-M. So we have been talking about the different indicators of a troubled marriage, and so far I've talked about fault finding, I've talked about defensiveness, but I want to talk about a next very common one that is found in troubled marriages which eventually goes on to end in divorce, is where there is what I call demonizing of the other person. It's sort of like blaming, like the first one, fault finding, but it takes on a more severe dimension, where the person is now not only attacked, but the person is demeaned, the person is mocked. There is attempt at shaming the person. The person is called derogatory names, and all in an attempt to avoid dealing with the conflict in the relationship. So when there is this demonizing taking place, what will end up happening is that the issues will never be discussed, because the fight will end up being about, you called me this name and you hurt my feelings. And after being bombarded by name calling over and over again, guess what will eventually happen?
Yeah, the person leaves.
The person leaves, or the person before leaving stops bringing up issues. And so there might be withdraw pattern where there is no fighting going on, but at the same time the relationship is decaying. There is an eroding of the fabric of the relationship taking place, which will eventually lead to disaster. And then we have another pattern, which is what I call shutdown. John Gottman called this stonewalling, where this person actually shuts down emotionally whenever issues are being discussed. So you might be listening to me right now and you're saying, yes, that's exactly what my husband does, or exactly what my wife does. Whenever an issue is brought to the table to be discussed, there is a kind of stony look, a kind of stony face, like, here we go again, and I don't want to go there, and how dare you bring up this issue? And sometimes it's just that coldness that result in the issues being avoided. And what happens at times is when this stonewalling takes place, it's a kind of punishment to the other person that says, if you dare try to talk to me about these issues, I'm going to punish you. And stonewalling can go on for days, where sometimes people will shut down and refuse to talk to their partner for days because they dare to raise an issue, or they will deny sexual intimacy with this person for days. So afterwards, being punished over and over again, the couples get into a kind of a rut where the issues are on the table, but the issues are there, but they are not being discussed. And I see that we're quickly running out of time here, Melissa. We might have to have another show on this, but let me just quickly say that these patterns, the fault finding, the defensiveness, the demonizing, and the shutdown or stonewalling, it is called in some of the literature, are indicators that your relationship might be in trouble. So I guess that takes us to, like, what can a couple do?
Exactly. If someone's listening to this and they're like, this is my life.
Yes.
This is happening in my home right now.
Right.
I don't want my marriage to head to divorce or whatnot. What can I do right now to help my marriage and to get through these conflicts in a healthy way?
The good thing about this is that these kind of patterns are very changeable. Communication skills are very easy to learn, and through cognitive behavior therapy, we can change and modify behavior and approach to conflict. So if one of the first thing that I would suggest is that if you're able to identify with any of these destructive patterns in your relationship, it is extremely essential and important that you seek help in learning good communication strategies, in finding out how to talk about issues in a way that minimizes the chance of conflict. It is possible that in some cases, even with the best approach at communication, you may have a spouse, for whatever reason, that doesn't want to deal with conflict, and this could be because of psychological predisposition, and so counseling might be necessary to get to the root of why someone is conflict averse, or is reluctant to talk about difficult issues. So counseling can be a very important way of dealing and helping couples to rectify their relationship. One of the most practical things you can do right now, even before you start doing counseling, is to try to minimize the level of emotions that you have in your discussion, because as we said in the communication broadcast that we did, when you get emotional and you start to scream or shout, people are only looking at your emotions, and they're looking at how crazy you look, at how much your eyes are wide open, but they're not really hearing what you're saying. The focus becomes on the emotion. So we have to stop here for today, but I encourage you, if you're listening to this radio show and you realize that your relationship is in trouble and in need of help, please give us a call at 613-699-1677. Again, 613-699-1677. And you have been listening to the Life Transformation radio broadcast. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of today's show, and thank you very much for discussing this topic with me, Melissa.
You're very welcome.
Okay. So if you have a question, again, you can reach us at 613-699-1677. And until next time, this is your host, Michael Hart, praying that God would grant you happiness in all your relationships and keep you sound in mind and pure in heart. God bless you until next time.